Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's roundtable on the evolution towards a more sustainable textile value chain. This topic of conversation is multifaceted and difficult to limit to a short roundtable, but nonetheless we'll try to cover some key points for change in the industry. I'm Madeline Thomas, Editor of Industry Digitalisation here at the World Textile Information Network, the host of the Innovate Textile and Apparel Virtual Trade Show. I'm also the editor of a number of our journals, Digital Textile, International Dyer and Finisher, and Textile 4.0 Journal. So I will be your host for this roundtable, and I'd like to introduce you to our three participants today, who are from a range of backgrounds. So firstly, we have Roland Beeman, founder and new business development at LMNS, a team of experts that jointly offer a full range of services in product and business development for the visual communications and printing industry. Roland has previously worked as a technology partner for ESMA and marketing director at digital ink company Kian, which is now part of JK Group and Dover Digital Printing. So welcome, Roland.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Julie Bilstra, business development manager at Pactics, a company that provides innovative microfiber packaging solutions and textile accessories to premium lifestyle, eyewear and travel and luggage brands. In 2019, she joined an Amsterdam-based startup, Everless, designer of a unique foldable shopping bag. So there her role was to set up a professional supply chain and ensure timely production. She also supports a production company active in non-woven hygiene products. And then last, but by no means least, we have Mariah Hester. She's a specialist in textile innovation and design and is currently completing an MSc in innovative textile design and is working as a researcher at New Industrial Order, a laboratory for fashion on demand. So previously she's worked in China in a number of positions in the fashion and apparel manufacturing industry. So welcome Julie and welcome Mariah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So before we begin, it's worth mentioning that if you have any questions for our participants, then please feel free to submit these in the live discussion thread. Okay, so I think first of all, just start by asking you all about the evolution towards a sustainable future that you have a vision of. Roland, if you'd like to begin.
Yeah, sure. In general, we see in our industry that there's a lot of movement towards a more sustainable textile industry. So I'm not going to suggest in what I'm going to say that we're not doing good things, but at the same time, I think that industry as a whole is not really looking at it holistically enough. My vision, or I would say our vision in the panel, is that we should look not only at the single production or supply chain elements, but we should be looking at our industry more as a whole. So the vision comes down to making sure that all the parties involved understand what it is to be good steward to our industry and improving on what they deliver as a technology to better our industry and in the end, yeah, our world, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And Julie, what's your vision of a more sustainable future?
I agree fully with Ronald. We here should talk about long-term thinking. The current situation tends to be about short-term thinking and short-term capital or money gains. We should work towards a situation where we sell less but sell better stuff. And because things of value tend to be taken care of, and people will value and treasure what they buy. Mm-hmm. In addition, I think collaboration should be done different, should be done on a basis of equality, and equality will also lead to better distribution of wealth and chances in life for all people in our world. Better collaboration will also lead to more transparency. At this moment, textile is a very complex world with many actors, and if you have many actors, it's very difficult to see who is responsible for what. And creating a better world will only start when people take responsibility for their actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Mariah, what do you think?
For me, the fundamental issue that I come across a lot when I research sustainability solutions in the textile industry is that the main system that drives global economy at the moment is still shareholder capitalism, which is indeed based on the notion of short-term profits. As long as this is the case, it's going to become really difficult to bring truly sustainable solutions to our problems. And you can see that already by the word sustainability being used as a marketing term now more than it's actually used as a strategy for businesses to like reinvent their business models. To ensure that they can actually bring value on not only economic areas, but also environmental and social. To me, that's a big problem, and I would like to see a change first in the business models, the way that we do business and we value our supply chains.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Mariah, has the coronavirus pandemic accelerated this future that we have a vision of, or has it negatively impacted it? Because we've kind of seen both ends of the scale, haven't we, with, you know, all the businesses shutting down and, you know, manufacturing shutting down in a way that we've never seen before. The argument is that the world has had a short chance to have a little bit of a recovery, but then we also see on the other side, you know, we're now using a lot more PPE once and then throw it away, you know, masks and more hospital gowns and things like that. So where's the balance to be had there with 19 pandemic?
Oh, sorry. Did you ask me?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the balance. I mean, I really hope that this pandemic has made sure that there is at least a fundamental exposure of where the issues really lie, because of course, like, this whole global supply chain has come crashing down, which I think for a lot of companies pointed at really fundamental areas that need change. Yes, there's more use in single-use medical textiles. I would mainly point that out.
Yeah.
I hope that's of a temporary situation.
Yeah.
If I may jump into Marije, I think it also made us, the supply chains in textile falling down also made very clear how complex these are and how difficult to manage at a long distance. Mm-hmm. But it also very clearly made us aware of the responsibility we have for the people in all these supply chains, because we create them and we made people dependent on them. And it is not like the whole fashion collections being cancelled and stuff like that. And people in the production countries being stuck with big stocks of clothing or any textile, or maybe even raw materials. This made very clear that we're also responsible for solving these problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we've seen that we're very vulnerable in this. The supply chain is long, it's complex, as Julie says, and we don't know when stuff is happening or where stuff is happening. And if I look at some of the figures that have been provided to us by international press, where large fashion houses, I'm not going to name them specifically by name, but there's a fashion house that just said we're going to cancel our orders that we placed in Bangladesh for 166 million worth. Then another big brand said for 178 million. And then one of the bigger names that we know here in Europe as well said 109 million is not going to be paid to people that have partly already created the fashion. So it's already produced. It's already somewhere laying in stock. And then the, let's say, Western world just decided with the argument that we have been faced with COVID-19 to not needing those garments. So then you see that there's a whole economy, but also a society that is depending on the business that comes out of, let's say, the Western world, in this case, Europe. And all of a sudden they are faced with having no income and no guarantees whatsoever what is going to happen next. So if you then look at what we've been saying in the industry as being, let's do local production for local markets, it sounds more like a vision or a wish than the actual reality, where we now see that an entire country that relies for 10 to 15% of everything that they do on that particular industry. Then here in the Western world, we can all say, yeah, we build beautiful machines and we make excellent inks, and yeah, we can change this industry by putting digital machinery in. But then it turns out it doesn't work like that. So COVID-19 is showing us that whatever we say or whatever we think we are responsible for is far beyond reality.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a rather short-sighted solution to also just say, like, okay, as a Western country, we just nearshore everything and we don't really think about the rest. That is exactly the problem that we kind of have now as well. It's not a full responsibility for a global supply chain that we already have a hand in, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. On top of that, if we just let me put it this way, I think that we have to stop pretending that once we have delivered a software that cuts on ink usage, or that we delivered a printer that doesn't produce as much waste as the previous generation, or that we've created media that can be more easily recycled, that then we have done everything in our power to change our industry. Because that's not the case. We have to look at the bigger picture, because here what we see often is we see pictures of production facilities that are lean and clean, and it all looks as if everything is all right. And then we see it as first-class, first-world digital production. And at the same time, there is a third-world problem where you see sometimes burnt down sweatshops where underpaid women and children are actually dying for our fashion gratifications, if I can put it so bluntly. Mm-hmm. Like Marije said, this is where we leave people with by just looking at it from our perspective alone, and that's not the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new form of colonialism.
Yeah. So will this, because with nearshoring there is, there's the view that we can't mass produce in nearshore markets. It's going to be more flexible, customized production. So will a shift from mass production change the price versus value perspective? And does this have to be done locally? And touching upon what you just said, Roland, what does this mean for those left behind? Julie, if you'd like to start.
But I think one of the first things we should get rid of basically is mass production, maybe, because mass production is seen from the perspective of somebody making something and throw it onto the market. I think we should change from a to a world where we maybe fill a demand. And so if people are looking for something or want to buy something, that it's basically made because somebody wants it. And what we see, and I read the articles, etc. So I didn't do any research myself on that, but what we see is that a lot of stuff that's being made will never reach the market because nobody wants it. And I think that needs to change. And I can imagine that local production will help do that. And maybe local production will also mean that, which I hope, that things get more expensive, because if things get more expensive, then I think people will take more care of stuff. We have seen like a spiral, the prices of fashion or any textile items going down and down and down. And I think in our brains, something has firmly got a place that things should be cheaper every time. And I don't think that will ever be sustainable or make a sustainable world. Because I think sustainability involves basically being responsible and feeling responsible for your own actions, and also be responsible for our world and the people in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mariah, do you agree?
Yes, I do think to shift that consumer need, that because it needs to shift from basically people choosing quality over quantity. It needs that fashion has to have an identity transformation towards a sustainable one, where hopefully, for example, digital fashion or digital fashion prototyping could actually play a vital role in how people consume fashion, because fashion is a way that people express themselves. It's also quite closely connected to social media, identity, marketing strategies of selling more, indeed, and trying to make people believe that they need to be someone new every week, which of course, like, that in itself, I think the expression part of fashion is not wrong. It's actually really nice way of expressing identity. However, in the way that we do that, digital technologies could offer a solution to maybe not always have to produce that fully from raw material resources. Mm-hmm. That I think is quite could potentially be an interesting shift.
Okay, and Roland, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe it's good to put it in perspective a little, because if you look at the figures, then yeah, we can all see that what we're doing is not right, or at least not to the point as what we say we're doing. And then we talk about sustainable production or sustainable industry, and how digitization or digitalisation, or whatever you want to call it, will help us. It will only change if, what I said before, we as an industry start looking at it with a thought of stewardship model, so that we take the responsibility to make it more transparent, to make sure that we all talk about the same figures. 30% of everything that is being created is not getting to a customer. And the portion that does get to a customer, 60% of that, again, is ending up in landfill within a year after it came off the production line. Since the mid-90s, the relative price of clothing in the EU has decreased by over 1/3. And at the same time, the collection changes increased from just seasonal, so 4 times a year, to sometimes 12, 15, 20 times a year. Which means that the articles that are being produced today are often worn less than 10 times. Which is if you look at it from a figure point of view, so just the raw statistics of it, it's very clear that we have to change that. And I try to combine that with one of the figures that landed on my desk, where it said that the price for cotton remained largely unchanged in 50 years. But the retail margin increased from 30% in 1970 to 70% in 2020. So it means that the money that's being made is not going to the places where you actually produce the material. So in optimizing and in automating and in improving everything, whether it be nearshoring or in low-wage regions, it means that we're not taking care of our own industry. And if we don't address these issues or these facts of our industry, then we can talk about how we improve our industry, but the figures tell us a different story. And that kind of transparency, that kind of input, that kind of, let's say, holistic view on our industry is needed for the changes that Marije and Julie just pointed out. Because we can have that wish, and we can even say in our marketing spin, because most of what we're saying in our industry is turning into marketing spin. But the moment we start opening up to those facts, only then can we do what Marije is saying. Only then we can look at what Julie is saying.
Mm-hmm. And what are the drivers of sustainable change, and how much does cost get in the way of this, Roland?
I'm fairly direct as a Dutch person. When I look at when people say these things, we've been selling, or with the companies I've worked for or with, we've been selling machinery and we've selling inks, and it's always come down to this sort of sales pitch. Ink price has to come down because that is a cost in our production. Which is hardly ever the case. So if you change a liter of ink from 40 euros to 30 euros, 10 euros difference. If you put 5 milliliters of ink per square meter, then it's only cents. But the true cost is mostly in waste and in the human factor. And we try to take away the human factor by shifting production to faraway regions. And then it seems as if digitalisation is coming at a lower cost, but in fact you're increasing it by shipping stuff around, having to take care of CO2 emissions. And if I then look at the machines that we built 15 years ago already, they are still running today. So these are productivity machines. And yes, it's digitalisation, but we were one of the few companies to mind productivity over price and margin. And it's simply too easy to just throw machines and inks and software into the marketplace and then stating because it's digital, it's better. It doesn't work like that. You have to look at the entire supply chain and start calling it a value chain, so that you increase the value, not just the productivity within that supply chain.
Okay, Marije, what's your opinion on this? You know, is the value in the supply chain only monetary?
I think we viewed it that way for a really, really long time, and that's how we got here in the first place. I think cost is the way that cost is defined or also used in accounting in a lot of companies is not correct. It's not, like Roland says, it's not calculating the true price. Mm-hmm. So in that way, cost is always an issue. Also, as a designer, I run into it always because designers tend to have quite idealistic ideas of what they want to make, but then cost is always the factor that downplays the original design, obviously. So yes.
And Julie, what do you think?
Well, taking on what Marije just said, that cost is then something that is directly related to a retail price or a price on the market. And apparently people are not open to pay more, because I think there's something wrong with the perception of value of something. And I think that is something that that also Ronald pointed out. If you have a value chain, the actors in that chain are supposed to add value, and that is sometimes very diffuse in a textile supply chain. But one of the things I think we need to touch upon still in our short session is the subject of education. And I'm sure Marije will say something about that, as she has not too long ago left school and is still in school also. But I think it all starts by educating the young designers, the people in textile sciences, etc., what the possibilities are. And only then can you make informed choices about what to use, how to do it, what is best, and how to change this. Mm-hmm. So maybe I can hand over to Marije.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did my bachelor about 10 years ago in textile design, and then I went on to work in the industry. And I quickly realized what I was working on and with was not the future. That was just very clear to me. And I decided to learn more about sustainability and what it actually means. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized, wow, this is a much more complex issue than you make it out to be. It's not just about changing the material to biological or organic or recycled. It's actually about the whole supply chain and the product and the usage and the end of life. So it's an entire life cycle assessment that actually needs to be done for most products and services in order to truly understand what it is. And I had to go back to school to start a Master of Science to also allow myself to really dive into this this matter. So and it's lacking in art schools and in I think design institutions in general, also because it is complex matter. And I do think also education needs to develop in a way that they can also deliver the professionals that have these skills in order to work with companies in the future on better products.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think the responsibility lies when it comes to this evolution that education is a part of, Roland?
All of us is the short answer. Look, there's a couple of companies that are trying to do their best. So if you look at a company like Farbenpunkt, they are trying to make a pigment ink that will be exactly the same across the different types of production scenes. So analog, traditional, and digital. And like I said, Hollanders is making machines that last long and have the best type of productivity, least amount of waste. If you look at a company like Zielware, they were trying to also make sure that you could have production when needed, where needed. And just recently, Fogra as an institute started to publicize on the textile RGB space that allows designers to get their colors better in place towards the production, so also limiting waste. So there's, but also if I look at Julie, she has worked with Pactics, where they not only made a production facility, but also looked at the people working there and best practices in how you work towards sustainability. And all these little initiatives by single companies or institutes are all very welcome. But at the same time, they're all sitting in their own silo almost. So they only see their own little world, and they try to do the best they can. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if they tweak something for the better for them, it is also good for someone upstream or downstream the supply or value chain. So that's the long answer to what I started off with. Everyone. So we all have a responsibility, and I think the WTIN, as who you are, is a platform that can help raise that awareness, and inviting people like Julie and Marije more often and to more detail, because we only have a little bit of time now. Mm-hmm. But I would, if I would be WTIN, pick their brains more to even show people that there's more to gain, and that there's much more that we can do all together than just looking at it step by step only.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Julie, what do you think? Where does this responsibility lie for you?
Responsibility lies in wide collaboration across the line, left to right, not being afraid of sharing your so-called secrets in production or something like that, because I think collaboration is more important than ever. Mm-hmm. And on an equal basis, because otherwise it's not collaboration, obviously. But, get rid of the interdependency in a negative sense, but make it a positive one, and that will also help the people in the manufacturing countries that we have created, because also there we need to help people move forward, educate, create a healthy industry.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And Marije, what do you think?
I don't really have a lot to add to what Roland and Julie just said. On all levels. So government regulations also, to me, play quite an important role. Mm-hmm. I know things cannot be arranged on a global level. We're not at that point yet, but that would be, for some cases, perhaps convenient.
Yeah.
However, that is perhaps a bit too far-fetched.
And Roland, you mentioned already a number of companies that are attempting to make a change. But what new technologies and applications do you think can help to drive this change to a sustainable future and a sustainable value chain? And where does digitalisation fit into that?
First of all, I think we should step away from maybe the word sustainability first, because it's been greenwashed. So if we try to put a label of sustainability onto something, then it's bound to fall flat on its face, I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. If I look at technology-wise, there is new types of ink and print heads that drive the possibilities further, that we can indeed use digital technology as opposed to traditional. But at the same time, we don't necessarily have to step away from traditional, as long as we're making sure that we produce less waste. We don't use as much energy and water in the process. And this is regardless of digital. I think that if we are to apply the digital workflow as a solution, it has to be in light of local production for local markets, to produce something when you need it, so that you get rid of stock, that you get rid of all these movements across the globe. And I think that digital can be a driver for that. But then in the back of our minds, we still have to think of, let's not digitize only for the sake of digitalization. So fast fashion should not remain fast fashion with the same amount of throwaway items, but less. So if technologies like tailor-made, so you could scan your own body and you could have your own avatar. So you have your digital version of yourself with your true measurements, hip, waist, chest, whatever. So what you like to wear. If we can combine that kind of technology with production so that a designer designs specifically for you in the colors that you want, in exactly the grades and the fit and the size that you would need, and if it's then being produced specifically for you so that you don't ship it back afterwards, then that kind of digital technology will help us make our industry a little bit better.
Okay, and Mariah, what do you think about this, being from a textile innovation background? Where does the digital workflow fit in when it comes to the evolution to a, I know we don't want to use that word, Roland, but a sustainable.
Well, I'm currently doing my research for my master thesis at a company called the New Industrial Order in Amsterdam. It's an innovative knitwear startup where it's focused on a completely digital supply chain, integrating 3D knitwear. And so I'm doing the research now also to see, okay, where does this gain value over conventional supply chains? Because of course the goal is to deliver better fitted, higher quality and no waste garments. But like I said before, it also needs a consumer shift in how they perceive fashion and how fashion in itself is consumed. I don't believe in the future of fast fashion whatsoever. But yeah, I do believe that fashion needs an identity change, and that is quite key also to digital supply chains.
Okay, and Julie, what do you think?
I think less will certainly be easier with digitization. On the other hand, I also value, but maybe I'm the old school one, I still very much value the touch of the individual maker, and to have some kind of, say, the old-fashioned skills of making something. Which then leads to, which is completely opposite of mass production, of course, because mass production always suggests that everything is the same. And the same as in really the same, because everything that's different is being kicked out and becomes waste. But I also hope, in addition to that, foremost, that digitization will help get data, make things more transparent, so people know where things come from, how something is made, will value, things get a face. It's not a machine only, but it's also people working on these machines and designing stuff that the machines will make. Yeah. So I think that's an important part of this evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe a question to our audience. I would really be curious to learn what other ideas are in our world about this evolution. And I'm sure there are a lot of creative people listening, and well, let's come up with them.
Yeah, so if you do have any questions regarding that from Julie, then please feel free to enter it into the live discussion thread. I guess just to sum up then, because we have touched a small amount on a lot of areas. Julie, if you'd like to start, what are the 3 key bullet point takeaways that you'd want the listeners to get from this?
From this
discussion, yeah.
Longer term thinking, collaboration on an equal footage, And then I do two. Value and education.
Value and education. Okay. And Roland, what would your 3 key takeaways be?
Yeah, largely the same as what Julie is saying. I would add to that more on a personal scale. Look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is this the future that I want to be in as an industry? And I would second what Julie just said, collaborate, speak with others, be more open to the other parties in the supply chain. So for me, the main takeaway would be we as an industry need to go onto a stewardship model. That is what I like people to think about.
Okay, interesting. And Mariah, what about yours?
Oh, it's always difficult to come last because
Sorry.
all the best ones are all he said already. No, definitely. Education is like a fundamental one. Invest in different business models. Please have a look out there what types of different business models there are available already these days.
Okay.
That divert from the conventional, and I would like to say rethink what is fashion's 4.0 identity.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I think that's it. We're all out of time now, guys. So thank you to all of you, Roland, Julia, Mariah. Thank you for your insights and for your time today. And also thank you to our visitors for your participation as well. I hope you found this discussion insightful and that it's given you some food for thought when it comes to exploring how we can implement change in the industry towards a more, sorry Roland, sustainable value chain. So thank you everyone.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.